Hey guys, you're welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, thanks for stopping by and please consider subscribing. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. In this tutorial, we'll be making a jumpsuit. Now, a jumpsuit is a garment that you have both the upper bodice and the down part, the trouser part together. Some can be from the shoulder all the way to the hem, and some will have a joining at the waistline. Now, in this tutorial, we'll be making that which has a joining at the waistline, and we'll be using drawstrings. To do this, I am folding my fabric into two and drawing an horizontal line at the top edge of my fabric. That will serve as my shoulder line, and on that line I am placing 3 inches for my neck weight and 7 inches for the neck depth. So I'll be connecting the neck weight to meet the neck depth, like so. Going back to the shoulder line, I am placing a half of my shoulder measurement. I'll be adding the desired sleeve length, and then I will add 2 inches for the seam allowance. At that point, I am going down with 1.5 inches for my shoulder slope, and I'll be connecting the shoulder slope to meet the neck width. Going back to the shoulder line again, I am placing my vertical dimensions of 10.5 inches as my bust point, and I'm using 18 inches for the half length. I'm adding 1 inch for seam allowance and 1 inch because it is a jumpsuit and you will need some ease at the crotch. Now that 1 inch I am adding for the seam allowance will be as the drawstrings channel later. Okay, so now I am drawing out what I have marked as my vertical measurement. I am drawing out the lines horizontally. So I've drawn out the waistline and I'm marking the bust point and drawing it out. The sleeve opening will be between shoulder slope and the bust point line. So I'm extending the bust point line all the way to the edge of the other edge of the fabric, and on that bust point line I am placing 1/4 of the bust measurement, 1/2 inch for ease and 1 inch for seam allowance. I'll be placing exactly that on the waistline. You know, the same measurement I have on my bust point, the same measurement I have on my waist. Now, because we'll be using the drawstring, that will give us the fitting that we need. And connecting this measurement from the waistline to the bust point, I will be drawing out what I have as the desired sleeve length and marking out the seam allowance. So because our body is not this pointy, I am just copying what I have as my measurement on the waistline to meet the sleeve. At this point, I'm cutting it out. For the back panel, I'll need 1 inch for the zipper. So we'll have ease when we're wearing it. We need a zipper for this jumpsuit. So I'll place the front panel on the back panel like so and pin it down. I like to make my panels, okay, my upper bodice to be 1 inch higher at the shoulder line. Okay, if you've been on this channel, you will know that I like the back panel to be 1 inch higher at the shoulder line, and of course I'll need a zipper. So we need that 1 inch for zipper allowance. So after marking this out, I am connecting the dot and then I'll cut it out, and that'll be the back panel. After cutting this out, I am cutting out the neck line that I have for the front, and the back neckline will be exactly the same neck weight, and I'm going down with 2 inches for the neck depth. I'm marking the 2 inches and then I'll connect it to meet the neck width. And after connecting that, I am cutting it out, and that's for the back neckline. So after cutting it out, I will need to make out that cut out that we have in the middle front. So I'll set the back panel at side, and then I'm using 1.5 inches from the center front. Okay, I'm going inwards with 1.5 inches. I'll mark it all the way to the hem and I'll connect it to meet the neckline and cut it out. So I will know the exact length that I need for the cut out. I will need to join the front panel to the back panel at the shoulder first. Okay, so the right side facing, you turn the fabric, the right side facing the right side, and I'll place the back panel that I've already joined the zipper allowance, you need to make that zipper allowance in loose stitch. So I'm joining the shoulder with 1/2 inch, and then I'll stitch the side with 1 inch that I added for the same allowance. So after I have joined that, look at, this is what we have, and I observe some tension around where I did the cuff out. I'll go inwards and notch out that part just to give it some ease. Okay, so after notching that to give you some ease, I'll measure from the mid back to the hem. This is, 2 ways. I'll measure what I have at the mid back, from the mid back to the hem, and I have 27 inches. Making that unfold is 54 inches. So it's not going to be a long strip. It will be, two strips, one for the left and the other for the right. I'm using this plain Mikado, and I measured about 27 3/4 inches and 5 inches height. Okay, so I've ironed it unfold, and I iron in 1/2 inch on both sides. That's to ease me when I'm sewing. So measuring from the midpoint to where I have the neckline, remember the 7 inches we marked for the neckline. I'm measuring from the mid back to that point, and I have 14 inches. Therefore means I am sewing, I'll leave 14 inches open. So I'm marking that 14 inches on the strip that I've already ironed out. Note the interface that I added to the fabric. Okay, so I'll bring the two together, and I'm joining from that 14 inches that I marked. So I'll sew it in the middle. Okay, now that's why I made it into, I folded it into 2. So I am sewing it from the middle all the way to the hem. And when I'm done with that, this is what we have. So it says for the right and for the left. So now I added a little allowance for it. You notice I used 27 3/4 inches. So I'll be sewing this 1/2 inch out, and that will give me, a neat edge. You can interlock this part, but I choose to sew it, okay, with 1/2 inch. Folding it inside out, I will take it to, from the midpoint, from the mid shoulder. That's where we are sewing it. So you can just, make the Ankara to just go in, and you sew it all the way to the hem, but I'll be using 1/2 inch, okay, sewing it from the back side first. So I will place, I will now cover the front. So from the mid shoulder, I am sewing with that 1/2 inch all the way to the hem. And when I'm done with that, I will tuck in the allowance that I've sewn out. Just look at what I'm doing. I'll tuck it in, and then make sure what I have on top covers the stitch. Then I'll sew it from that mid shoulder to the hem, and that will look like a band, but of course, in the middle it is joined to the other one. I'll do the same thing to the other side, and then we'll move over to the trousers part. So for the trousers, we're using 1 inch for the seam allowance. Remember, we need a drawstring for this jumpsuit, so that's why I'm leaving 1 inch, and then I'm marking 1 inch at the far edge there, at the left edge. That will serve as a margin. So now for the hip measurements, I'm adding 4 more inches to the hip measurement, because I want it to be a palazzo and I didn't want to make it a slash and spread method. So adding that 4 inches to my hip allowance, I have 51. Dividing that 51 by 4, I have 12.75 inches. So that's what I'll be using to make a square. Okay, so from the waistline that I have there, I'm measuring 12.75 downwards, and I'll mark it. I'll draw the horizontal line, and I'll mark the same thing on the waistline and the hip line. So that 12.7, from that 12.75 inches, I'm going downwards with about 3 inches. Because it's a palazzo, we need all the ease. Originally it should be 2.6, but I approximated it to 3 inches just to give the client some ease around the crotch, and because it's a palazzo, and of course because it is a jumpsuit. So for the crotch extension, I'm using 3 inches, and I'll be cuffing that from that 3 inches to meet the hip line. So for a normal trouser, you mark your knee and the hem, but this is a palazzo, so I'm just using the hip measurement that I already have divided by 4. That's what I'm marking, and then I'll connect the crotch extension to meet that line. Just watch me do it. I have a tutorial, edited tutorial on how to make a pencil trouser, butt coat, palazzo, flay, all in one kind of tutorial. Please check it out on my channel to have a better understanding of how to make trousers, okay, to draft trousers. So on my waistline, I am marking a quarter of the waist measurement, half inch for ease, and half inch for sewing. Now this measurement will need to correspond with what you have for the upper bodice. All right, so I'm connecting that measurement now to the hip line, and this is what we have for the front panel, and I'm cutting it out. So for the back panel, I am simply placing it on another folded fabric. Okay, on the crotch line there, I will extend it with 3 inches. That's for the back panel. I'm extending it more with 3 inches, and I'll be adding 2 inches from the waistline to the crotch, and from the crotch downwards to the hem. I'll be using 2 inches. That will serve for my seam allowance. Okay, so when I'm done marking these 2 inches, I'll then connect the 2 inches to meet the extension, the crotch extension I have for the back. And I'll do the same thing. I'll connect the crotch extension to the extension I have all the way to the waistline. So I'm using the cuff part of my pattern master, and watch me do it. I'm cuffing that to meet the crotch extension, and then I'll take it to the waistline. This is a palazzo and a very easy method that we're using. So I'm just cutting this out, and that's for the front and the back panel. So now, because this is not by desired length for the trouser, I'll be adding a plain mikado, a purple mikado to the down part, so the down part will not look funny. I'm just taking out half inch, okay, half inch from what I have as the hem before, and then I'm marking out the 2 inches that were originally used. Then that's it, we are done, and I'll measure it from the waistline to the point that I have there, about 27 inches. So I'll need about 12 inches, okay, for the desired length, for you to get to the desired length and the hem allowance. So I'm using this plain mikado, and I have about 12 inches there. So now I'll place the ankara on the mikado with half inch. So I'll be using half inch to do the sewing, to stitch the plain to the ankara. Okay, so join that out so we'll know where we are placing it, and now mix it. Now remember, this fabric is on fold, okay, so it will be for each part of the front panel, and I'll do the same thing to the back. Okay, exactly what I do to this front is what I'll do to the back. So pinning it down now, I'll mark out the hem allowance that I added, that's 2 inches, and I'll draw that line, and then I'll simply connect what I have from the first length to what I have on the second length. Now the second length means the desired length. Now I'll connect it to meet that point, and note that I'm just taking out a little angle with about a 1/4 inch on each side. That's because when you want to hem, you will not run short of fabric. So cutting that out, I have the desired length for the trousers, and I'll do the same thing to the back panel. Okay, so when I'm done with that, I will take it to the machine, and I'm using half inch to join the back crotch, okay, from the waistline to the crotch, and I'll do the same thing to the front panel. Now for the back crotch, because we are adding zipper, I'll use 1 inch to sew. Remember the channel that we need for the drawstrings. So I'm using 1 inch to sew to some point, and the other side as well, I am using 1 inch to sew. I'll sew it all the way to the side. Okay, I'm not sewing everything completely because I need to take out the inch that I have. Just watch me sew. So I'll do the same thing to the front, from the middle to somewhere at the side, somewhere from the middle to the side, not completely, and I'm sewing the other side as well using 1 inch at the same allowance. Then I'll sew out the side stitch for the trousers on both sides, and then take out, after joining it, I'm joining the sides, completing the 1 inch, and then I'm joining the plain fabric to the Ankara now, and then we have our trousers. So after completing our trousers, I am joining that part that I didn't complete, so I have it complete now, and I'm sewing out the drawstrings channels. You're simply pushing the allowance that you have after interlocking to the upper part, and then you sew it from one zipper allowance to the next zipper allowance. For the drawstrings, I am using 1.5 inches unfold, and I'm using about the length 32 inches. So you can go ahead and use double of your waist measurement. That is, if you have 40, that will be in 80. That 80 will be 40 for each side, and then sewing it to make it a rope. I'm using a safety pin to just push it from the zipper, the zipper part. So I'm pushing it all the way to the middle front, and remember, at the middle front we have the plain fabric which we join in the middle. So I'll open that part and then push out the zipper allowance. Be careful so you will not push in everything. So that means you will need to secure it, the one you have at the zipper part. So after doing this on both sides, you will take it to the machine and secure the ropes. When you're done securing the ropes, you can now insert your zipper. Okay. So after inserting your zipper, and we are done with the drawstrings and the trouser part, basically we are done with the jumpsuit. And this is what we have. So if this video adds any value to you at all, give me a thumbs up, like